Okay, so we have done all this. Now, when we are doing with the database settings or anything, okay, in this, we have done with the input tools where we have connected with CSV files or some CSV or Excel files, all of these stuff, or IXCB file and all these. Okay, now in the input file, we can have the database connectivity as well. We can pull the data from the SQL, bring it to Alteryx and work around. Okay, so that's an option as well. We have an Alteryx. So I'll show you how we connect and everything. But first of all, there are some set of the steps to remember for it. So this is something which is there. So basically, Alteryx has that ability to connect with SQL Server or any of your database. So I have SQL Server in my system. So that's why I'm using that. But if you want to connect to if you want to connect to Oracle, you want to connect to DB360, you want to connect to your Amazon Redshift, you want to connect to any of them, you can connect. You want to connect to Access or anything, you can connect with it. So it has that ability to connect to any of the database and pull the data from that. So basically, these are the steps that is to be remembered whenever you are doing a connection with SQL. So basically, you have to first drag an input file onto the canvas like this, as you can see on the screenshot. Now you go and click in the configuration window, you click on the connect file or a database in the data source and then click on the data source option. So it's like this. You go here in the data source option and here you just click on the quick connect. The next steps is to have a quick connect over here. So after setting up the quick connect like this, you have to provide a connection name and you have to provide your desktop like the server name here. So here in the server name you provided, and after providing that server name, all the authentications, you have to click on test. So when you click on test, it would give you a pop-up message that your connections have been successfully established. Okay, or connection successful, like this. It will show you connection was successful. Then after when the connection is established, in this drop down of default database, you will able to see all the databases that you have in your SQL server. You have in your SQL server. Okay, or whatever database you are using actually. In that, you will able to see all the databases, all the databases that you have created and everything. So you can able to
Yeah. Shane, I'm following you.
okay, okay. So you can do that. Okay. So after this, like let's say you can see over here in the snippet that in the default database, you can see that there's an like I have a database as employee. So I selected that. So once you selected whatever your specific database you selected,
What is the Windows authentication, SQL authentication?
uh, see window authentication and SQL authentication is window authentication. You really don't have to provide the username and password. It just take the Windows authentication. So, for example, if you have your desktop, if you have a desktop, or if you have a laptop where you have not provided your user ID and password, so it would take the window authentication means it would simply run without any username and password. And SQL authentication, when you work on the client side, you will always have a username and password for a server specifically, because that is something where you have been provided an access for, and there will be a username and password so that you can log into the specific servers or the databases. I'll show you how it is, like not
Okay.
username and password, but I'll tell you how the structure is. So after this, you can specifically select a table or a query. Let's say from here, when you go, you have to go to the visual query builder. You can select the specific database and query. Now here in the table, you have to select all the columns which you want to input in the Alteryx. So this is something which is a manual task. which we have to do whenever we are pulling the data from the SQL Server. So once done, click on OK, and then just give a control and run. You'll able to see the table over here. Okay, so I'll show you how this works, what all steps we did. I'll show you that in Alteryx as well. Let's say I'll pull up our input file, go over here, go to data source. I'll have a quick connect. You can see there are a lot of databases which you can connect for. I'll set up a quick connect. Now here I can have a connection name as let's say I give a connection name as this. Now here I have to give a host name. So that means my server name. So I need to let me start this up. So see, this is my server name. I'll just copy it from here and I'll just paste it over here. Now there are two authentication types, window and SQL. If you see in my SQL server, also there are a lot of authentications actually, but Alteryx only provide two, window and SQL Server authentication. So when it is window authentications, that means your username would be like this, whatever your server name is, and you are the admin like this, and you don't need to enter any password. But when I select the SQL Server authentications, I have to always create a login ID and a password. And whenever I log in, I have to log in with a username and password. Okay. So that's a sort of a separate database you create every time with every username and password. So here I have this Author Active Dictionary, Author Directory passwords. If you want to connect to Author, obviously, integrated passwords or everything. If you're connecting to Author, you have to select that. So now what happens is that this is window authentication. This password is only when you have the SQL server in your database and you're using for a purpose, like the server is not hugely connected with all the data sets and it doesn't have each and every data which is used across the organization. Then you have an authenticate. Then you have the window authentication. But yes, but when there is a scenario where you are using a client specific database, for example, client has has taken a server, okay, and in that client has taken a server space for it. Like let's say the client has taken us 80 GB of a server space in the server. Okay, and in that 80 GB only, client has to like create the databases and everything for now. So when the client provides you an access for that server with the database and password, so that is what is your SQL authentication. Okay.
Yeah, got it, Ishan. So
So
most of the time,
yeah,
yeah, we are using only SQL authentication.
sorry, come again.
Most of the time, I am using only SQL authentication only.
Mm-hmm. So, like when you log in into SQL, do you have a username or password, or do you
Yeah,
use
yeah.
a window?
Admin will provide the username password.
Exactly, because there is a different admin over here. Here,
Yes.
as it is your laptop, your personal laptop, so you are the admin. Okay,
That
because
sense.
uh, because what happens is that there are a lot of database. Okay, basically in an organization, people buy database servers and they get paid for that. Like for example, if I would talk about my organization or your organization, if they use SQL, so for every data space they pay some amount. Okay, like let's say, like I give you an example, if they get 80 GB, then they have to pay like 20 or 25 $20 or $30 or something. They have to pay for that space. Okay, and when that space is completely used, then they would buy another space. So you would, and there is a different admin who would have the access of creating the table, or who would have the access of deleting a table. Whenever you work on whenever there is an organization access of any of the database, you'll always see you won't, and if it is used by using a username and password, you would never have the authentications of creating a table, and you would never have an authentications of deleting anything. You won't have that permissions only. Like here, I can create a table because I'm the admin, so I have all the rights of creating the table. I have all the rights of deleting the table. But when somebody else is admin and you have been given a username and password, so you won't have an option of creating a table. You would not have an option of deleting a table. That is only being given an access to the admin. You can drop a table, but you can't delete a table. It's very rare that some of them have been given the create access, because now they don't give the creation of the table access or the database creation of any new database also, because it's only given to some of the people who are like in their team with the code development of SQL. Only they have been given. Otherwise, we have an option of import wizard in our SQL, so we can import the data from that as well. So basically, all the organizations who are using SQL at the point of time, preferably use a they preferably use the import wizard feature in the SQL for importing the data. They would never use that create table option. They would always use an import wizard option, because obviously the data is coming from client.
Yes,
So
Ishan.
they would always prefer to use the import wizard. Okay, now so I have an window authentication. If you have an SQL authentication, let's say, you can have the username and password, and you can click on test and set up your connections. So let's say I have window authentications. I click on test. The connection was successful. Now I would be able to see my database. So let's take the transaction database one. Okay. So it takes a few minutes. Now here, let's say I'll pull the transaction table over here. I'll expand this. Sorry, expand this. So this is this. Um, so I can pull whatever table I want. I want this table over here. So I drag and drop it over here. Now I want to select.
How to select all the columns at a time? Is it possible?
No, it is not possible. You have to manually go and select it. That's what this drawback is. That's what one drawback is over here. You can't select like at a one stretch.
Okay.
So like we selected it. You can close it also if you want. So there you have like this table. If I go to table, you will see over here. This is the table, all tables. This is the visual query builder. If you have any stored procedures in your data, you can write it over here. Um, so there is no stored procedures. Yeah, with SQL editor window, you can edit from here. Like if you want to add up anything, you want to write any query, then do that over here. You have an SQL editor feature, and you can test the query obviously. So I don't want to write any query. I just pull the table. I can click on OK, and now if I run Control R,
In your organization using SQL most of the time?
yeah,
SQL
SQL
service?
Server. Yes, SQL Server, Google BigQuery, but majorly SQL Server.
SQL. So they have provided SQL query to design the interface, to design the workflow.
They are not provided as SQL query because we basically, if we want to have it, we just connect it with SQL and we pull the data in the Alteryx and we work. So we don't have SQL queries provided. We have to create SQL queries by ourselves.
Yourself, you have to create the query and
Yeah, yeah. Means we
design.
don't have, yeah, exactly. We don't have the rights of creating a table and deleting a table, like I said. But yeah, we do have to create queries.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to create queries by ourselves. We are not provided any query from middle.
So one question here. So
Mm-hmm.
already we have the import the transaction table.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there any possible to give the alias name of this table?
Sorry, is there any
Alias name.
alias name? I have not given the alias name, but you can give that. I have not generally given the alias name.
No, actually my question is actually, so if you give the self join,
Mm-hmm.
so you can have to download the same table. Okay. So we need to identify the so the table A also transaction, table B also transaction, but don't know. So that is the reason we need to provide the alias name to identify which one is the master, which one is the child, like that.
Oh, okay. In that case, you can provide a alias table, so it will show you in that way only. But yeah, you have to give it in the SQL. You can't give it over here like this,
So,
or maybe when you are setting up a connection now. So like this
okay,
is one-time task where you set up the connection. Like we go to import and we have that quick setup, and this is one-time connection. So when you are writing that connection name in the box, you can there only write that transaction table underscore master table and transaction table underscore. So that's a one-time task. So every time you go and have this, you will have your other connection names, whatever you have set up previously, that would be stored automatically. So you can just
okay,
click on that and you can just run your table and you can bring the data over there. So
okay,
that is just a one-time task for you to set up there and you can have a connection name and everything. So in the connection name only you can get that.
Okay, okay, got it. Got
So yeah, this is the data which I've pulled from SQL, and let's check this in SQL as well. So I have a lot of tables in I don't know why it's taking this much time. I don't know what happened here right now. But yeah, sort of this table only you will find out about what this reflects in my data itself, like in my transaction table itself. So this is sort of a query. This is the query phase and everything. You can comment over here and all it. I think maybe a connection is set up. That's why. Okay. So yeah, that was setting up the data, like bringing the data from the SQL into your database. Actually, uh, this is one of a thing which we works with. So here you are actually bringing the data from the SQL into Alteryx, and then you would be working around with it. So this is one setup where you bring it. So this is input from the input data you are doing it. Okay. Now there's a second option which comes up, which is the in-database connectivity, which we do actually. So now when we come across with the in-database connectivity, the in-database tools comes into picture. So here you are connecting with the in-database and you are doing everything in the database itself and putting the data back into the database. So here you are not bringing the data into Alteryx actually. You can see on the Alteryx interface because you have that tools which makes a connection bridge over your database and your Alteryx, and you are able to, like, whatever the changes happens, that happens in your database itself through Alteryx. Okay, so this is the second thing which comes up. Hello.
Sorry. So in database, we are using like.
In database is sort of a bridge. The in database tools are actually a sort of a bridge which helps to make a connection between your Alteryx and your any of your databases. Let's say in this case it's SQL Server, so it helps to make a connection between the SQL Server and your Alteryx to do all the functionality, like maybe a union, maybe to add a formula, maybe to do anything in the database itself, but on the interface of Alteryx. But everything would be done in SQL itself. So that's the major difference. Here you are bringing the data from SQL into Alteryx and then working around. But in database, your all the data is kept in your SQL itself. Okay, if you have any new data, you can put that, you can ingest that in your SQL Server through the Alteryx, and with that you can apply any formula, any filters, any joins, anything, and you can work on in the server. You can make all the changes in the Alteryx database, but the interface would be Alteryx for you, so that you can see the data element. It's not you have to go exactly into the SQL Server and work. You can simply work on the database and do it. So here the advantage is that you don't have to write the SQL queries and all of that stuff.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Yeah. So let me just show you how it is. Hmm. Okay. So So what is the benefit of a database tool? It helps to conduct the analysis. So it's a faster analysis because it helps you for a faster data movement. So you see that whenever I'm trying to have a connection with SQL Server, and if my data is a bit heavy, so it is not that fast. It takes some time. Whereas when you are doing the in database tool, it is a pretty much faster, as the data, as it is not bringing the data from a different server to a different server, but it is just moving the data on it, and it is the movement in the database itself. So it would be pretty much faster than the normal in database connectivity. Okay, and you don't have to write any SQL codes here. When you're working with the in database, you don't have to write any SQL codes. You can simply do it with these tools. See, people write sometimes if they want any changes or anything, but generally, if there is no change or nothing, then generally, majorly, we don't write any SQL codes. Okay, so these are the tools which I told you. So you would see here, mm, you would see here in the in database tools, they are same. Like we have a browse, we have connect with DB, we have filter and everything. But you will see here, this is blue, and these like these indicators actually, like these, they have these blue connections. These anchors are blue, whereas the other tools, the anchors are green. One thing, and they have like single connectivity where there's double connectivity. I'll tell you why it is why the difference is there actually. Mm, So I have a use case over here. I'll let you know what's the use case. The use case is actually is that I have an issue that I have a SAS file. So here I have two files. One is the SAS file with the customer data, and which is a input file for me, which is like a SAS file, which is a flat file which is given to me, and I have a transaction data which is in my database. Okay, I want to blend these two data together. So basically, I have a normal input file, but the data is that is the type of the data is a SAS file, and that is a flat file, and I want to blend my flat file with my with my transaction data which is there in the SQL Server. Okay, that's the issue, and my goal is to blend them together, and then accordingly I have to write the results into the database. Okay, that's what my goal is to achieve. First, I have to combine the SAS file and the transaction data together, and then I have to apply some of the logics or something, and then I have to put that back again into my SQL Server as a new table. Okay, did you understand the use case?
Got it.
Okay, so the workflow, like the process powered would be why database, first of all, how to combine it, what are the streaming, how to create, sorry, to create a workflow. So the tools what we are going to cover over here is like your write in DB, your data stream in, data stream out, your summarize for connection in DB, any formulas, filter, and the join tool. These are the tools actually we are going to cover when we are using this use case. Okay. Now, what are the supported databases that you can actually use while setting up a connection? These are some of the databases that you can use for setting up a connections in with the SQL in the in database. Now I was talking about the anchors. You have I showed you that normal tools have a green anchor and a single line, whereas like standard tools have an with arrow anchor, and between them the connection between them is like a single line. Whereas when you see in the database, the anchor is green, the database anchors are blue, and the connection is double. So why the connection is double? Because it is actually the progress is in the database, and you will see. And one more thing, whenever in the Alteryx, whenever we run anything in the Alteryx, you will always see. So, for example, if I run this workflow right now, you will see here you can see there is a process, there is some processing of the data which is being shown. But in this database connectivity, you can't see what is the how many records have been processed, what is the size of that record and everything. You can't see that, right? So it would never show you because it is something which is in the database and you can't see the progress. So that's the major difference, that they have a green anchor and a single line, and they have a blue anchor and a double line. And moreover, this blue anchor cannot be connected with this green anchor. You can't connect these tools with the normal in these normal other tools, the normal standard tools. You can't connect the database tools with the standard tools. Okay. That's a sort of thing which you should remember, which is to be remembered actually. So is it clear?
Yeah, clear.
Okay. So any questions till now? If not, then we can move ahead with the use case. And if you have any questions, then tell me.
Yeah, from the in database tools, I understand. So it's showing a colors different, and there is a double the line. Mhm. Yeah, fine.
Okay. So let's move to the use case then. So I told you what's my use case was. Yeah, so my use case was I have a SAS file and have a transaction data in my database, and I want to blend them together. Let me open this. Oh, no, I think I need to have it. Let's see. I need to connect it.
So we have seen macro input in DB, macro output in DB. What those are?
These are for the macro, like for example, you have to create any macros or anything with the database, then you can do that. So this is actually the transaction data. Okay, this is in my database, and this is the SAS file which I have, which have my customer ID, my store number, customer segment, some responders, of yes and no, address, city, state, zip, and everything. Okay. So now what I want to do is that this is a sort of a flat file, like an input file. I want to mm, get this data into my database, that is here in this interface. How would I do it? Basically, I want to blend these two data, this transaction table and this table. I want to blend them together. So this was my file. I've provided a auto field for the specifications of the data types and everything. Now, what I did is that I set up a connection. I want to put this data into my database, obviously my SQL Server. So I set up a connection. So how I set up a connection is that as I already have a connection, so I'll show you how I set up a connection. You can go to manage connections. When you go to manage connections, you will see a lot of options. You can select Microsoft SQL Server. Now, in this, your connection type is a user or a file. You want to connect with a user, then you can select that. If you want to connect with a file, then you have to provide the file connection name. For example, if that's a sort of an import wizard, which we use in SQL. Similarly, we have that option over here also. Now, after this, if like you have an existing connection, like I have, I can select it from there. If you are the first time creating any connection, so just select new. You have to write a connection name. Let's say same. Now I don't have any password encryptions. So here You have to be very careful. You have to select this. Hmm. When you select this, so there are two options like SQL Server OLEDB. OLEDB means in your database. And if it's ODBC connection, then accordingly you have to select the ODBC connection. So when you select a connection string, if I go to a database, you'll have this data link property. So from here you can select this. You can select on next. You can enter your server name, what I have. Copy this. As I'm using the window authentications, so I don't need that. Now I can select whatever data I want to select the database in the server. Let's say I select the master, or maybe I select an employee, and I say test connection. So my connections is succeeding. Okay, and I select OK. Now be careful with this read and write. Whatever you select in read, that should be same on write. And if you want it to be different, like you want the drivers to be different, for example, here I'm selecting as OLEDB, the OL database. So, and if you want it as a bulk loader, so you can click that. It's up to you how you're processing it. But as or OLEDB or ODBC, so say similarly you have to make the configuration. But I don't. I want it as same, so I can keep it as same as the read driver. So whatever. So read and write should you would be very careful with the read and write. If it is same, majority of the times the read and write are same. The read and write drivers would be same from where you have to read the data, you have to put the data in that database only with that same drivers. It's very it's like one one of a case that where you are taking the data from SQL and putting it to another database maybe Azure or maybe Access or something. Okay. So now when you set this up, you can just simply click apply and click OK. So see, that connection has been set up. Now you have to create a temporary table. I have created a temporary table. I don't want to create any new table for now because as this is one of my data which will be like getting updated all the time. So for that purpose, I have created a temporary table for now. Okay. Now, if you let's say you want to run this workflow till yet to see if my data has been there or not. I have to always apply a browse tool over here every time to see the data because I run this data and if I click on this answer, I will not be able to see the data in this result window. The reason behind this is something which is in the database. So if I want to look up that in my Alteryx in my result window, then for that you have to every time pull the browse tool. So here the browse tool doesn't make it slow like I told you. In the standard tools, when you have lot of browse tools, and you have to make it as like make that browse tool as enable while processing. You have to disable those browse tools. Here, this doesn't happen. Okay, so let's say I'll run this. Let's see if my connection is set up accurately or not. So see, yes, my data has been set up, so my connection is set up accurately. So see, here you can see the left and the right side must have the same in DB connection. So now why I got this error because I don't have the same database connectivity as that of your this statement. So I have to set up the same connections. So you can see over the data. It has been there. And if you want to check in your SQL, you can expand this, you can expand the tables. So I think it's not refreshed. Okay, so now I have entered the data in my database. Now, here I have this error. Sorry, I have this temporary table created. So here I have an error because my left and right in database connections is not same. So now for this also you'll have to do the same thing. So I can take your connection which I have created. I'll click OK and run this. Okay, let's set up the connection again. I don't know what's happening. Let's say this is what my data I have created all this. Oh, let's set up a connections again. Now there is no error over here. Why? Because actually I have set up the same connection. So this is something which is like required. You can't have the different two connections whenever you are doing a join because the join would be done on the same table with the same connection names. I can't have two different connections and I can't do the join. So after this, I took my file, like whichever I had in the database, that is the transaction data, which I showed you, like just how I showed you. This is the table which is there in my database itself. So from here, I have now connected a select, the select in DB. Select in DB is like similarly a select tool which we use. Then we have this formula which I have applied over here. So in this formula, I have applied two formulas over here for the transaction amount first, and then the unit price. For the transaction amount, I have applied this, and for unit price, this is what my case statement. So I applied this formula and then I summarize it based on customer ID, transaction amount, and the count of the transactions. Now, here I'm doing a join between the two. So here the join comes on, like here you will able to get the full outer join in the database. because obviously it's working on the SQL database, so it will get you the all the outer joins exactly. So now on the customer ID is common in both of my databases, so I'll have a join based on that. And when I run it, I can see that based on the customer ID, I have these join records over here. Now, with this join, I want to like get the responders who are with yes and no. So, if let's say I'll cut this paste it on here, and then this. I want to see all the responders who are no. So I can see over here the responders with no. See, the data has been filtered out with the responders no. When that data has been filtered out, what I use is that I use the union to combine this data and this data together, and then I have used a data stream out. Now, why I have used a data stream out is that because this I have combined in my data, and now I want it to be a different table to get into the data with a different name and a different table. That's why I have brought that out of my database over here with this data stream out, this one. When you have data stream out, you'll see there is a green, there is this green anchor, because this will help you to, this has bring out the data from your SQL server into the Alteryx. Okay, because I want to create a new table. I want to create a new table and a new connection so that I can set up that, because I want to create a temporary table over here, a new table for the responders who are no. I want to have a different table altogether. So then I have bring the connecting the data stream in, as I want to put that back into my data with my connection. So let's say I'll give that same connections and I'll create a temporary table. So yeah, I have created a temporary table over here, and I just want only the 10 records of the data. If you see over here, we'll only get the first 10 records of the data because I filtered it out. And here I have created a new table which is like top 10 responders. So I've used the write-in database. So here, from here, I have put that back into my database, which is top 10 responders. And here it gets finished because see the anchors has been like blurred out. Why? Because I have put that back into my database. So now if I want to check that is my data gone into the database, so I can check for that. How? Either you just go onto the tables and check from here, or see I have top 10 responders. So I want to check it in my transaction table. See, these are my top 10 responders, and here I have the responders as no. That is a temporary table, and I have selected over here override table drop. So every time when you create a new table, when you create this, it would delete all the data and it would put up the new data every time.
If you like our videos, then subscribe to our channel and be a part of the journey with GoLogica and stay connected with the latest videos.